Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to Similarweb's latest webinar on crushing 2025 sales with cross retail insights. Now, just one quick housekeeping note. We will feel free to add questions in the chat as you present throughout the deck. We'll take all the questions towards the end. Now, we'll have three speakers today. Hi, my name is Sayam. I am based in London and I manage our e-commerce, marketplace, and retail intelligence solutions. My background before joining Similarweb is actually on the brand side. So I used to lead e-commerce category management across EMEA for a large consumer goods company. I'm joined with two of my colleagues here, Ben and Lindsay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Parks. I'm the Director of Advisory Services here, based out of the US. And similar to Siam, I came from a background in consumer goods and retail, and actually was previously a client of Similarweb. So after seeing the data in action working with retail partners, I moved over to Similarweb back in January. And I will hand over to Lindsay to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I am a senior advisory services consultant on Ben's team, focusing on consumer packaged goods. My background is more in digital marketing and market research.
Now, today we'll go across a few different topics. So, very quick introduction to Similarweb for anyone who doesn't know what Similarweb is. We'll tell you a little bit about our latest offering, which is Cross Retail IQ. And then Ben and Lindsay will take you through a category deep dive across some of the largest retailers in the US. In the end, we'll take your questions. So, feel free to add those in the chat and keep them coming. Now, Similarweb is the world's leading AI-powered digital data company. And we've been doing this for over 10 years, and we provide digital intelligence across more than 1 billion websites, more than 4 million apps, more than 5 billion search terms, whether those are across Google, Amazon, retail sites, YouTube, or Gen AI, which has been very popular recently. And we cover more than 250 million product SKUs across the world. That is e-commerce sites, pure players like Amazon, etc. So the scope is broad and global, whether it's D2C distribution, whether it's pure player Amazon marketplace distribution, or through e-commerce retail sites such as Walmart, Tesco, etc. Now, how does Similarweb estimate this data? So we want to tackle this first before we start talking about our products and insights. Now, at Similarweb, it's a three-step process for us. The first one is really about data sources. It all starts from having very strong and comprehensive data sources. The largest one for us is a contributory network. You must have heard that from us a few times. It's what we also call our panel data. Now, Similarweb has the largest online digital panel in the world. These are connected devices from more than 10 million different users across the world. Along with this, we have first-party data, data from brands, retailers who connect their own first-party accounts, such as Google Analytics or Amazon Vendor Central, Seller Central, to our solutions. Third one is publicly available data. So this is either us scraping publicly available data online, or it could be publicly available data sets available online. And last but not least is our partnership data. These data sets we complement through our partners panels. All of these data sources are combined together, cleaned, compiled, and put through our machine learning engine, which produces these AI models for us, estimating a plethora of different metrics you can see at the bottom. And this really gives us a measure of the digital world. Now, all these different metrics across a bunch of different domains, categories, websites, retailers gives rise to a plethora of different use cases for brands and retailers. And we are going into some of those use cases today. Now, moving on, we'll talk about our latest offering. So our latest offering is Cross Retail Analytics. It's AI powered, and it's really to unbox and uncover the world of e-commerce marketplaces. Before we were focusing mostly on Amazon, now we want to open it up to all other online retailers, whether those are pure players or omni-channel retailers. there were really three main challenges that we were hearing from our customers. The first one is getting product level insights across all digital retailers in unified custom categories. We know all brands and all retailers have their own taxonomy. So, how can we see market intelligence in the same way we see our internal data, how we report on internal data? The second one, what are consumers searching for at these retail sites? Now, we already have a lot of intelligence on what consumers search on Google, but we also know a lot of shopping starts at retail sites, not necessarily Google. So, what are consumers searching for at these retail sites to understand either brand share of voice or product discovery patterns at retailers? And last but not the least, it's a pretty hot topic these days. So, retail media, understanding how we can get the highest ROI across retail media investments or really build a retail media revenue channel as a retailer and provide that transparency across your competition. Now, as you solve for these challenges, and we'll talk about these elements now throughout the deck as we go into the specific categories with Ben and Lindsay. The first one is we've solved for this. We've solved for having a unified view across all these different channels. This is product level information. So you're able to see product views rolled up to brands and categories across retailers, all customized to your own taxonomy. And this intelligence is available at a weekly level. We supplement this with OSS, what we call on-site search data, to understand what consumers are searching for at that website. So what they search for, what they click into, and what they view at a website. So you're able to go through that funnel. Now, we've provided all this granularity and customization through our AI tagging model. So all the advancements we've seen in AI and LLMs over the last couple of years, we're utilizing those, and I'll go into methodology in a second. And lastly, the scope. So we are covering more than 150 retailers here across the world. Today, we'll focus on some of the US retailers. So how do we do this? So I already talked about a Similarweb panel, which was a contributory network, and there's a full AI layer on top of that to give us this custom unified taxonomy across all retailers. Now, if you think about the panel, Similarweb panel data, what we're able to see through our panel is what URLs on any given website in the world are performing well. So if we take a URL example here, which is an Amazon URL, we'll be able to see, okay, this URL through our panel is performing well. We'll be able to go into the URL to understand what that product page is. So the title, brand, etc. So looking at the metadata of the product, and we'll tag each individual product through our AI tags. So we'll understand this product, for example, is a baby diapering disposable product. So we've had a full understanding of it. I'll give you an example on the next slide where once we've looked at a laptop, we've gone into the URL, we've looked at the laptop, we've taken a snapshot of the entire page from the domain, breadcrumbs, image, description, and brand and titles, and assigned this to a unified taxonomy. And this is true at scale. So as we'll see on the next website, on the next slide, that we do this at scale across all retailers. Then we go across all different categories, understanding the metadata, assigning the products to a unified taxonomy, and in the end, running our AI models on top of it to estimate PDP views, so product page views, the unique visitors on that product page, and lastly, the on-site search clicks. So this is the scope. It's highly customized, and some of these metrics we'll see now with Ben and Lindsay as an example of what kind of insights you can generate. So handing it over to you, Ben.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks, Siam. So now we're going to dig into some actual data behind it. So we're going to go into the consumer electronics category, and we're going to focus on the top 5 retailers in the US to kind of guide us through our journey here. So to kick off, we're actually going to do a poll. So for everyone on the call, which category or subcategory within electronics do you think had the most amount of product detail page views in the past year? So you'll have headphones, laptops, phones, smartwatches, tablets, or TVs. So take your vote right now. Which one do you think has the most amount of views to the PDP over the past year. And we'll give you a few seconds to cast your votes. Okay, with that, we'll close our vote. And the answer is actually headphones. So headphones is actually the largest category from a view perspective across the top 5 retailers in the US that we're looking at in this analysis, which is Amazon, Walmart, Target, Best Buy, and Costco. So here is kind of the data that Siam was alluding to and kind of really coming to life across these 5 categories across these retailers. So on the x-axis here, we are seeing the time period of 2 years. And on the y-axis, we are seeing estimated views to PDPs. And naturally here, you can see the spikes across Amazon Spring Sale, Prime Day, Cyber Week, and the dark blue line is headphones. So you can really see here how large the headphone category is, in some months reaching almost 150 million views to product detail pages. Now, what's interesting here is you see most of the categories follow a similar pattern. They see big spikes during Prime Day, big spikes during Cyber Weeks, but interestingly, one category that doesn't really follow that exactly is phones. And if you look at phones, it's in the green line here, and you do not see quite as much as the rise as you do for other categories during those time periods based on how people are buying new phones and their shopping habits. Now, if we look at May, which is the most recent data we have, so Simon kind of walked through some of the data methodology and the time periods. Now, we can see here in the month of May that actually the fastest growing category year on year was laptops. And we've seen that trend emerging over the past few months as people kind of go towards some of the higher processing laptops. And then secondary behind that, we can see smartwatches. Now, smartwatches is a category that we'll dive into later, but you can see on the right-hand side here in yellow, the 15.8% year on year is a real growth behind the smartwatch category as we see new brands emerging in that space within these retailers. So demand is up. We're seeing that across the board in all the categories. We're seeing growth in every category of views. But who's actually winning the views in each category? So Amazon. Amazon overall has the largest share of views within all the subcategories in electronics. And you can see here in the dark blue, the Amazon percentage of estimated views for those categories. So on one side, you have headphones, where Amazon has around 85% of the product detail page views. On the other side, you have TVs, which is kind of interesting really to see that actually TVs for Amazon is around 44%, with retailers like Best Buy actually really over-delivering in that area, around 26% for Best Buy for TVs, and actually Costco emerging really within the TV category from online with around 7%. So you can see across the board there, Amazon has a pretty large share of the market from views, but you can see there's nuances between each category. And as you're thinking about this from a brand perspective, it's about, okay, for your categories, where do we show up best? And from a retailer perspective, it's about how do we benchmark ourselves versus our peers for our subcategories. So we've seen overall that Amazon is the leading player. We've seen the time period changes in terms of different subcategories. But there's actually one retailer that we haven't mentioned so far that's been in the numbers that actually is gaining share in 5 out of 6 categories. And that retailer is Walmart. So what we're looking at here essentially is the top 2 for each of the subcategories growth drivers in the month of May. So you can see here across the board that you have headphones to the left all the way through to TVs to the right. And Walmart is picking up share in all of these categories. And it's the number 1 in 5 out of 6, with Costco leading in TVs. So for headphones, Walmart is number 1, with Target number 2 in terms of share growth, and all the way through to Amazon being at a close second place for tablets, for phones, and for smartwatches, or for laptops. And for tablets, you can see Target coming up second. So Walmart is really accelerating their omni business, and this is really helping them pick up share in terms of views in the month of May, and accelerating, which Lindsay will drive into later, some of the reasons why this is happening. So what are the numbers behind it? So we then just showed a kind of visual example to show where Walmart is picking up on the categories. Now, we can actually get more granular than that, and this kind of goes back into the methodology that Simon was going out to show the actual values in change. So Walmart is actually accelerating the most, interesting enough, in TVs. So we saw that Costco is leading in that aspect, but Walmart is really picking up share around 3.6 points over the past year May versus May, 24 versus 25. And in totality, they're picking up around 2 points, May 25 versus May 24. So you can see across the board here, Walmart is really accelerating their growth in all categories within electronics. And we talked a little bit around the time periods. We've talked about who's picking up, but also what we can see within the data, interestingly, is actually how people are discovering products. So not just the views, but where the views are coming from. And here we're looking at Walmart again because we've seen that Walmart is really picking up share. And what's interesting is I think many of us who've worked in e-commerce for a number of years would assume that the most kind of views are coming from retailer on-site search. If you think about how you typically use a retailer, I think most of us assume that we go onto the site and we search in the search bar and then we go to a product detail page. Well, actually what we're seeing in the most latest time period, that only around a quarter of the PDP clicks are actually coming from search for phones in green here, so 26%. So we see overall that actually there's other parts of the site that play a really important part in the customer journey. And if you think about things like the deals page, the home page, the category pages, these are parts of the site that are playing a really important role at Walmart. And we see differences between subcategories. So on one side here, phones is around 26% of views to PDPs coming from on-site retailer search. On the flip side, laptops and smartwatches actually even less so, around 18% of both of those. So as you're thinking about your retail media strategy, as you're thinking about benchmarking versus different retailers, understanding how people discover products is really core to how you focus your strategy as you go forward. And then across the board, so we just looked at Walmart and kind of we took some examples there from the different subcategories about how people are engaging. But as I mentioned previously, you have to kind of tailor your strategy differently. And as you think about different retailers and how people engage on site, once again, you have to think about it differently. So as we mentioned a few minutes ago, people do go onto Amazon and generally search more to find products. And you can see for smartwatches, around 42% of product detail page views come from search. So really in that kind of far end of people leveraging search to find products. On the flip side, Target actually around 16%. So people are really going on to Target in terms of the smartwatch category and using different parts of the site to discover products. And you can see when you think about your retail media investment across these different players, how you prioritize search versus deals pages or home pages is something to really think about in your strategy as you go forward. So we talked a lot about retailers, we've talked a lot about subcategories, but what about the brands that are within it? So what we saw from our analysis that the top 5 electronics brands within any of the retailers typically hold around 75% of views for a given subcategory. So a real monopoly on the eyeballs within each category. So you'd assume this would create a barrier for new brands. You'd assume this means it's really hard to crack into new retailers and new spaces for some emerging players. But actually what we see is difference once again. We see difference across the different retailers. Now, I appreciate there's quite a lot going on in this chart, but if you look from left to right, we have different categories here. And what the dots represent is the number of views coming from the top 5 players. And the key thing that we see here is that Amazon is the dark blue and Walmart is the light blue. And what we see, if you're a newer brand, it's easier to crack into the view share on Amazon and Walmart than it is against Best Buy, Costco, and Target. And that makes sense when you think about it, right? Because typically the listing process at Best Buy, Costco, and Target is a negotiation with the buyer, whereas Amazon and Walmart are a marketplace. So it makes it a little bit easier for you to tap into that. But as you can see from this kind of analysis, you can really to dig into, okay, as your brand and prioritizing launching, where is it possible to get the highest level of eyeball clicks going forward versus the other retailers within your set? So we've gone through views, we've gone through categories, and we've gone through brands and retailers. Now we're going to pivot into an example that Lindsay's going to take us through in terms of smartwatches.
Thanks, Ben. So as Ben mentioned before, smartwatches is a category where we've seen a lot of growth year over year. We saw about a 16 percentage point increase in views from May to May. Walmart's a category performance is doing really well. So let's take a look at the category itself. Starting with some high level stats that you'll need to know. In the past 12 months, we've seen about 243 million total views within the category. That's up about 5% year over year. And we saw 2,000 unique brands across those 5 key retailer partners. We've seen about 48 million total on-site search clicks. So that's clicks on a site from a keyword searched on Amazon, Target, Walmart, etc. It could be a branded or a non-branded term. And we'll get into the terms actually driving clicks in a little bit. Amazon is the top retailer and is also the fastest growing retailer, up 10% year over year. That being said, Walmart was the second fastest growing retailer with a 9% increase in smartwatch views year over year. So Amazon is number one, but Walmart's quickly growing. They're gaining traction on Amazon, and they're definitely a competitor to watch. Finally, the top channel driving traffic is direct. When we say marketing channel, this is how the user is landing on the site in the same session in which they view a smartwatch. So, for example, on Amazon, going directly to Amazon.com and then viewing a smartwatch in the same session. This allows us to understand if users, are going straight to the site and then going to a smartwatch, if there's other ways that channels are driving traffic to smartwatch PDPs, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Who are some of those top brands? So by far on every single retailer, both this year and last year, Apple was the number one brand by views in the given subcategory. Samsung and Garmin typically battled it out for number two, followed by Fitbit and Amazfit. When you look at the chart, we can see someone like Costco does limit the number of brands they offer, meaning there's very little change in the year-over-year top 10 brands. Same thing with Best Buy. But when you look at someone like Walmart, as Ben mentioned, it's a marketplace, so brands are constantly entering and emerging. When we look at the green arrows, we can see who rose in the ranking year over year. The red arrows are who dropped in the rankings. And then the orange brands are new to the top 10 of May of 2025. And Walmart, 4 out of their 10 top brands were new. They were not in the top 10 ranking in May of 2024. And some of these new brands are replacing established players like Garmin and Fitbit. Specifically, Teakland overtook both of these established players. We see a brand Mingdong. They were number 5 last year. They're number 3 this year, again, overtaking some of those more established brands. So we can see Walmart is definitely a place where new emerging brands can gain traction, they can gain speed, compared to someone like Costco or Target, where there's a little bit of an established playing field and it's harder to break in. So we talked about, we saw that Chinese smartwatch brand Mingdong is outpacing Garmin, Fitbit, and Google and Walmart views. When you take a look at their products, they look very similar to another product offered by Apple, their Apple smartwatch. They're really capitalizing on that popular trend. People want Apple watches, but this is just kind of a discount offering. We can see with this Walmart early access, it was $21 compared to $160. So they're willing to heavily discount to kind of capitalize on those consumer trends. We did want to highlight some of those other new and growing brands. So when we look at the x-axis, we see the volume of estimated views that these brands had in May of 2025. And on the y-axis, the year-over-year change in volume of views. We see a player like Apple, by far very well established, clearly the leader in volume of views, and also doing really well in gaining views year over year. We then have a Samsung, who's number 2 for volume of views, actually gained slightly more than Apple, but again, very clear established number 2. It's where we get into the long tail that the interesting story comes out. So again, we talked about Mingdong. They have the smartwatches that look a lot like Apple watches. They gained over 150,000 views year over year in May of 2025, so they're performing really well. Any brand in green had less than 30,000 views in May of 2024 and is now in the top 10. So again, there are 5 brands in here who grew really quickly year over year, quickly rose to the top. They're kind of disruptors in the field. They're replacing brands like Amazfit and Fitbit. When you look at Fitbit, they were the only brand in the top 10 to actually lose volume of views year over year. So Fitbit is suffering at the expense of some of these new entrants. And it's definitely a category to watch, brands to monitor. As Siam mentioned earlier, the data set does have product level data. So we're able to dig into exactly what products are driving these growth. We can understand, do I have products similar or different to this? Are there different features that are really driving this growth? So the nice part about this data set is you can get really granular and look at the specific products changing it. So now we've taken a look at that. Ben's talked a lot about how users are actually landing on the PDPs. So we're going to take a second to kind of look at that, how are shoppers actually landing on smartwatches on these retailers. And we can see that about 25% of visits to smartwatches on Walmart, Target, and Best Buy came from a Google search. So again, that's users searching on Google, landing on Walmart, and visiting a smartwatch PDP in that same session. When we look at someone like Amazon and Costco, over 65% of those category views came from a direct visit. So that's someone going directly to Amazon.com and viewing a PDP. What we know about Amazon is that that's a place where a lot of shoppers are actually beginning their shopper journey. They're kind of skipping that upfront Google research and they're just going directly to the retailer and starting their journey there. And we'll actually see that play out with the top on-site search terms that drive traffic to smartwatches on Amazon later. Amazon does see more traction from non-branded terms, so indicating that that is more of a research platform compared to someone like a Best Buy or a Target. shoppers aren't necessarily going straight to Best Buy to start their research journey. They might start elsewhere, like Google search, which eventually drives them to the category on Best Buy and Target. This can help prioritize channels to work with the retail partners. With Amazon, it's really important to show up on the category pages, the home page, the deal page, because so much traffic starts directly on Amazon versus someone like Best Buy, Walmart, Target. There's more an opportunity to work with those external channels before the shopper even reaches the main retailer. Focusing on paid and organic Google search, because we know those are large drivers of traffic for Walmart. Walmart has really been accelerating their share of smartwatch category traffic from Google, reaching almost 50% in April. When we look back to early 2023, around 20 to 30% of traffic to the category actually came from a Google search, versus now, or late 2025, we're reaching almost 50% in April. So they've really focused on prioritizing traffic from Google search over the past year, reaching the levels of Best Buy, overtaking Costco, and especially overtaking Amazon. So that's really a category that Walmart is focusing on, and definitely a chance for an external partnership working on kind of what are those paid landing pages, organic landing pages, and those search terms that Walmart is prioritizing. So we've talked about how shoppers are kind of getting to the retailer once they view a smartwatch, but for those users who are already on the retailer, how are they searching for smartwatches and how are they discovering those products? So we're going to do a little quick case study on those keywords. Starting with the proportion of on-site search clicks from branded versus non-branded terms by retailer in the smartwatch category. This really helps us to understand if consumers come in with a research mindset or if they already have a brand in mind. So for example, on Amazon, 88% of the search clicks in smartwatches were branded. So that's someone searching for Apple, they're searching for Garmin, they're searching for Fitbit, and 12% from non-branded. So that's someone just searching for generic smartwatch. So we can see it's heavily branded. Most consumers do come in with a brand in mind, are searching on clicking for branded results. But when we look at the bottom left-hand corner, we've placed a chart to help understand the year-over-year percentage point change in share of on-site search clicks from branded specific terms. When you look at Amazon, Best Buy, Costco, the percent clicks coming from branded terms has been increasing year over year. So more consumers are looking for those brands, clicking on those brands, versus a Target and Walmart. The share of clicks from branded terms has been dropping, meaning more consumers are clicking on non-branded terms. They're a little bit more research focused. And that's really kind of what has allowed some of those long tail brands to do well on Walmart. They're showing up on those non-branded terms. Someone just searching for a Walmart, and Walmart clicks are definitely shifting in that direction. So again, on-site search is contributing to the rise of some of those brands who are a little bit more unknown because they can capitalize on those terms. They can find that researching consumer and go from there. Who's actually going to get clicks from those terms? Primarily, it's Apple. Apple did secure smartwatch on-site search clicks across retailers, especially on Costco with 85% and Target 79%. Amazon does stand out for its diverse brand mix, but like we talked about and Ben and Simon both talked about, Amazon is more of a marketplace, so there's a lot longer tail. There's more brands competing for clicks, making it harder to really get a foothold in this space. And then with someone like Costco, again, Costco offers a limited number of brands to begin with. So of course, Apple does really well when there's only 3 offerings. And then Walmart, again, Walmart has the second highest proportion of on-site search clicks going to other brands. And that's that long tail we saw earlier. 26% of those clicks are going elsewhere and allowing people to fight for that visibility. What are those top terms that people are searching for? Again, primarily Apple, understandable that they have the largest volume of clicks, considering that the top terms are mostly Apple related. Amazon was the only retailer to have a non-branded term in the top 6, again, indicating that Amazon is a place where consumers might start their research. They just start by searching smartwatch and going from there. And when you look at the results page for that term smartwatch, we see that people are really paying to play. So Samsung has that really large banner ad at the top. We see a smaller brand, Boomic, having the first paid search listing there. So that's a competitive space for some of those smaller brands like Boomic to appear on that research-based term. When we look at Best Buy, Costco, Target, again, it's mostly Apple. We do see Samsung Watch appearing as the second most clicked term on Best Buy, which is interesting to see. And then again, Galaxy appearing at 5th place. So those are 2 Samsung terms doing well on Best Buy. We see Fitbit doing all right on Walmart as well, even though we did see some drop in traffic year over year. But again, this is nice to see what brands are people searching for, but also what non-branded research terms are happening. Are there any features that people are searching for, any features that are growing in popularity year over year to help understand not only what are the products people are searching for, but what are the features, trends, what are kind of the long tail keywords that people are searching for and what might drive growth in the future. So to kind of summarize everything we've talked about, first being that category strategy, Amazon is the leading retailer for volume of views by consumer electronics subcategory, but Walmart had the most growth year-over-year in views, using cross-retail IQ to help identify the market leaders versus the market growers. Second being channel management. Direct is a top driver of traffic to retailers like Amazon and Costco versus a Target, a Best Buy, a Walmart are more reliant on Google search. So monitoring those top driving channels to find partnership opportunities with retailers. And then finally, the on-site search optimization. Branded terms drove clicks in the smartwatch category, but other categories may be different. So finding top terms driving search clicks in subcategories to kind of find those trending topics.
So those are some great insights we've seen from Ben and Lindsay, covering the consumer electronics category at a high level, but also going into the smartwatches case study deep dive. Now, to wrap this up, Cross Retail IQ is our new offering. It's obviously not just limited to consumer electronics, so we're in beauty, home and kitchen, appliances, and all other categories, including FMCG. So feel free to reach out to us in case any of these insights are useful to you. As I'm wrapping this up, we are talking about market sizing and market share. We are talking about category management. We are talking about optimizing for retail media and understanding consumer search, what they're searching for, is it branded, non-branded, and what parts of a website drive the most traffic to a PDP. So there are a lot of different use cases that we can go into. Now, uh, uh, this is Cross Retail IQ. Let's get on to your questions. There's also a quick plugin for us that Prime Day is going on right now. We're in day 3, one more day to go. And as we wrap up Prime Day, we will share a post Prime Day analysis. Feel free to scan this QR code. You can sign up and register for that Prime Day report. It will be released on Tuesday next week. So a lot of good insights on Amazon Prime Day in there. Now, let's go to questions. Let me just quickly see our Q&A, and we had a few questions in there. So we've got one, like we talked about the headphone example. Are we able to dig into specific headphone segments? Example, looking at high-end Bluetooth segments, cheap plugins, over-ear headphones. So can we really categorize these by segments across the retailers?
Yeah, I can jump in here. So yes, we can do the views at an item level. So the price point or the categorization is no challenge for us. So we just have to define the segment, and then from there we can get to that data. Yeah. So today we shared a lot on brands and categories, but we can go down to an individual item level.
That also aligns very nicely to another question. Can we actually see product level information?
Yes, exactly. So that ties up that time. So we have a product of information. We can do categorization. We really build this specific to client needs. So it's very much customizable about how we cut and show the data. But yes, fundamentally, we have an item level. From there, you can kind of go however you want that fits your taxonomy.
Great. And we have another question on the scope. And we've looked at some of the main retailers in the US today. Can we go beyond these retailers into some of the smaller or more niche retailers in any given category? For example, Sephora, Ulta, or smaller ones as well.
Yeah, typically we can. So I think if you have a retail that you're interested in exploring for us, then by all means bring it to us and we can kind of help you see if it's part of it. But pretty much any large retailer in the US across the beauty, home and kitchen, electronic space, we can definitely capture. So if you have one in mind, then reach out to us. But the best way to look at this analysis typically is looking at a broad set of retailers as well. So you can really compare the differences between the different retailers.
We have another question here. Is this available on a Similarweb platform, or is there a different way to access this data?
Typically, we find that the best way to utilize this data is one of two ways. One of them is we build a dashboard for you. We build something They're really customizable. But the best way we find clients leveraging this data is through a data feed, and then they would take this data and embed it as part of their existing systems. So, for example, a client might take this data and then marry it over with some of their first party data as well to give them the view of themselves versus their peer set. So the best way we recommend is data feed. The other way is potentially looking at customizable dashboards based on what a client's need is.
And maybe, Lindsay, next one for you, which is more on the smartwatches deep dive we did. And the question is, has Similarweb also seen growth in interest on smart wearables like smart rings and not just smartwatches?
Yeah, definitely. So that Brandley highlighted Mingdong, they also have a series of smart rings, and we've seen growth in that category as well. To Simon's point earlier, we are AI tagging all of these pages. So any page on a Walmart, like a smart rings page, we're capturing the data for. We're seeing traction in that category, and we'll continue to monitor.
Great. And guys, do we know that in addition to the metrics we've talked about today, so such as product views, unique visitors, clicks, and all that good stuff, do we have conversions as well?
So conversions is coming. We have conversions in many of our data set right now, but within Cross Retail IQ, conversions will be coming in the platform. Sam, I don't know if you have an update on the time frame on that.
Yeah, so conversions is something we're working on right now. We should have conversions available in a couple of weeks. So as part of this data set, as and when we have our next conversations, conversions will be available. So yes.
Great news.
That's everything we have today from all our questions. If there are any last minute questions, do feel free to add them in the chat. We have another question. Is this data available in a tool like Similarweb Pro, or is it bespoke? So I think we've already covered that question, that you have dashboards or data feeds for Cross Retail IQ. So it's not in Pro, it's not in a platform, it's customized. And the whole idea is we want to customize it to your taxonomy, build it out with you, and then we deliver it to you in a data feed or through a dashboard. We've answered all the questions, so that's great. Now we'll just wrap this up. Thank you everyone for joining today. Will share a recording of this, and we will share the webinar deck out with all of you. So thank you again for your time. And thank you, Lindsay and Ben, for joining and presenting on this webinar.